I guess since it's about 2 minutes after the hour, let's just go ahead and get started. There will be people straggling in as usual. So I guess welcome everyone to this edition of the Louisville Small Business Summit. A group of us, Jeff Walston, Brian Reed, Stuart Alexander, and various other people. We started the group later last year to essentially create a resource for small business owners really across the country. Since we've been since COVID has taken place, we've been able to reach out to people from across the nation to come share ideas that are beneficial to small business owners. And so we're really happy today to be able to address a topic that I know is extremely pertinent, in particular in an environment where we've been kind of limited in our marketing ability. So I think we're going to be, we're going to limit that. So I think what we're going to go ahead and do is kind of introduce a few of our speakers. So Alison Werder from Main Street Marketing, she's going to be talking a little bit about paid advertising and how you can utilize that in your business. Then we'll have Brittany Murphy speak, who's from One Thing Marketing, local here in Louisville. Who's going to talk a little bit about SEO and website. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with Robert Johnstone from Wayne Media Group. And he's going to talk about podcasting and how really starting a podcast can be beneficial for your business. So without further ado, I guess we'll start off with Alison. Welcome. Thanks again for sharing your time with us.
Nice. Great. I thought I was going third, but I would much prefer to go first. I'm sorry to the other presenters if that was your preferred mode too. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. I created a presentation mostly for myself. I find it easier to talk for like 45 minutes than 10 or 15. So I'll use this to kind of keep me on track. All right, so a little let's start a little bit of background. I am a small business owner myself. And so I do have a marketing company, and it is a marketing company geared specifically for small businesses. But my foray into this whole world started very organically. I was a stay-at-home mom back in the time frame was 2008. I was actually pregnant with our third, and we do have 4 kids, but I was pregnant with number 3. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I knew that I wanted to do something to get out of the house. I am a very outgoing person, and I needed to have some community outside of my own little mini community at home. But I also thought if I could make some money for my small family, that would be awesome. So I think this is how a lot of small businesses start, is that, that little flicker of wanting to do something on your own that you can control and impact. So I had that happen to me. And then I just didn't know what. I didn't know what that thing was. I was in college. I went for dietetics, and I knew that I didn't really, see any avenues there. So around the same time, my sister, who was basically living the life that I wanted to, I just kind of had glimmers and dreams of at that moment as I was, just at home with these babies. She was traveling around the world. She nannied in New Zealand. She'd take off to New York. And so one trip she came back and she brought me scarves. And so I started to wear these scarves. This is 2008, and I live in Minnesota. All right, so you would think that scarves would be something that are prevalent in style, but they weren't. They weren't, not in fashion, not in the fashion world. And so I started to wear them. Women started to notice, and then the idea struck. So I bought a box of scarves from New York. I took our meager savings, $300 out of our savings account at that time was very big. And I bought a box. I put up a little mini pop-up in the local coffee shop, and the idea took off. So that's how it all started. I would travel around. I would boutique women's living rooms. I would pull out all of the car seats, and then I would put in all of my coats of scarves and the fixtures and everything. And I did that for 2 years. So that was kind of my first step into the world of business. I had to learn everything from that point. I had to learn what a tax ID was. I had to learn, all these different things and trying to learn how to pull a profit from this. So I did that for 2 years. And then I thought it's going to be easier if I just have a spot, to sell things. And so that's where my retail boutique was born. I took over a space in the local grocery store that had closed down for a lot of like main streets, you know. Here we're a town of 1,200 people. I know, it's tiny, New London, Minnesota, 1,200 people. The grocery store had closed down and it was empty for a few years. So I took a little spot out of that in a little corner. I'll show you. All right. Oh, nope, not there. In here, it'll show you a little bit of that. So I took a little spot and then I ran the boutique for about 2 years. Now, I have to say I ran the boutique, but I didn't. The boutique absolutely ran me. I was working like 70 hours a week, including Saturdays, and then Sunday I'd have to reset everything, you know, for the next time around, but I was not making any money. And it was really, really frustrating. I thought that I would just have to pay my dues. I just thought it was a process that I would have to just go through in order to, you know, make it big. I was doing everything the other stores along Main Street because we have quite a, you know, kind of a boutique-y area here. I was doing everything that they did. So I thought that all would be good. But I remember the one key conversation, a little bit raised voices conversation that I had with my husband was, where I said, you know, I don't know if this is going to work. And he pointed out that I could make more money if I worked at the coffee shop next door to my store than I was in the store and doing all of that work. So that was the kind of the turmoil that I was in within this. And I thought about just closing it up, going back to doing the traveling boutique, but that's a lot of work. So I was in this spot, and then enter a young guy who, and you know, I'm pretty young. I mean, at the time I was, you know, early 30s, and this guy was 22-year-old guy who came in to my boutique, and he started to talk to me about marketing. So that's the short version of the story. He actually interviewed me for a local publication, and he asked really good questions. And I was like, what does he know? How can he ask these really good questions that I honestly didn't know the answers to, but he did a really nice write-up for me anyway. And so that was like the first, my first touch, and I met a guy named Tim. So Tim kind of, you know, came back, brought me the publication, and he said, I think I can help you with your marketing. And I said, I think you can too. And at this point, as you imagine where I was at, I had 2 stores at this point. I dared to open a second location when the first one wasn't even working because I thought I must just have to expand this thing in order to actually see the profits. No. So he, you know, came into this scenario and he started to share with me some principles and some ideas that he had about how to do marketing for a small business that really taps into some old-fashioned kind of ideas, yet bringing it into the new light within the realm that we have right now, the new platforms, paid advertising, et cetera. So the first idea that he actually presented me with was to host an event at my boutique. And so I'll just play a short little video here that kind of walks through that.
Before they even came. So when we finally started to measure our marketing efforts and we got more strategic about it, then things started to change. So one of the first events that we actually did using the Mainstream Marketing Program was a fashion show. And the really cool part about this campaign was that we actually set up an ad where we would gather their name, email, and phone number of the people who wanted a ticket to attend the fashion show, which actually was right here, before they even came. So the concept of actually building a database of potential prospects beforehand was a novel concept to me, but it was so valuable. So that particular night was amazing. We had actually 110 women show up. We filled up the store with chairs, and some women actually had to stand. And we had a fabulous show. Women were actually lined up around the building, just waiting to come in. And the atmosphere was just fabulous. And so that night, when I closed up the doors at the end of the night and like all the smoke cleared, and mind you, like my store had a lot less inventory left over. I did some calculations and we did $7,500 in sales that night, which was more than I had ever done in a month. of sales. This whole campaign, that I learned through the mainstream marketing program was just so eye-opening to me. And I knew that there was something here that I had to dig further into because of the success that I was seeing. I finally felt like I could actually control a form of advertising like I'd never done before.
So that was already two and a half years ago that I filmed that. So the type of advertising that I'd done up until that point would have been the typical things that small businesses, I believe, put their toe into at the beginning. It would be your newspaper, it would be your radio, local, local publications from different reps that come around. And honestly, this is one of them that I did, or I have a lot of embarrassing advertising stories, but one of them is I just put in one whole page, all it was my logo. That was what was encouraged to me. And that I went with that for $1,200. I can't, it's just ridiculous to me now. Nothing on there, no call to action, nothing that would actually encourage people to want to continue business with me. So that's what I'd done up to that point. And so you could imagine this was a breath of fresh air. We did this campaign, and this was the first campaign that Tim boldly told me to do. And I'll be honest, I had a lot of hesitation. Why does a boutique need leads? Isn't that something that just real estate agents or insurance agents or other types of agents need? Why would a boutique need that? Second of all, in order to gain these leads, we did a tactic. This cannot be a strategy. These kinds of tactics in order to gain your list are just that. They have to be part of a larger, grander strategy. But we did do a coupon, a 50% off coupon of one item in order to get women to come out. And as you can see, they came, they definitely came, they got a show. But what I realized after that is even if I would have broken even at that particular event, I didn't, I was profitable, but even if I would have broken even at that event, it would have been worth it because that was my first step into the list. Okay, sorry, getting used to this here. So the first kind of principle that I learned through Tim and through this was to measure your marketing. So the list was part of this mentality that I had to adapt, which was I can track things, I can measure things, and I can control things within my marketing. I can actually put forth an effort and have people walk through my door. That was huge to me. But before that, I couldn't even tell you how to measure anything, any of the ad dollars that I was spending. And it wasn't just because of the platform that I was using. We happened to push that one out on Facebook ads, but it was more so the whole entire strategy around it, having a call to action, having a reason for people to connect with us. And then, from that point on, we started off by just that list of 200 people. Currently, our list at Ally J Boutique, and mind you, we're in a town of 1,200 people. I have a list of 7,600 women. And for me in the boutique and what we do here, I basically have the county. Let's just say it that way. That's what I have in my list. And it's great because that really makes sure that I don't have to worry if Facebook shifts and it changes or it gets too expensive for the boutique or it doesn't matter. I've got this list and I can utilize my list. In fact, when our business was shut down in March and April, what did I do? Oh, I greatly utilized that list. And we were able to monetize the list in that time. In fact, 2020 for us was not lower in profitability. My husband just ran the numbers and we were up 12% in 2020. All right. So one of the principles, okay, so the principles. So this is what, kind of tracking back a little bit. This is what we believe at Main Street Marketing. We believe in old-fashioned trust building. So if you're going to do, and I know that this is under the vein of paid advertising, so I'm going to try to wrap that in here. Doing paid advertising, telling a small business owner that they should invest their dollar in a form of paid advertising. We believe that there has to be such a strategy of trust building baked into every dollar spent, or else that dollar going out into, whatever it is, Facebook ads, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it is, whatever platform you choose to use, if you can't hold that dollar accountable back to something, back to a bit deeper strategy, you're totally going to miss out. I know that every single small business owner has to like think of every dollar in their marketing because they just simply don't have as much to work with, especially when you're in growth mode, right? So old-fashioned trust building, we think of it like this. It's like when you sit down at a baseball game next to somebody and it's somebody you've maybe seen around town, but you don't really know who they are. What are some of the things that you start to talk with them about? That's what we do. We start off by creating that little web of interaction that then can grow and grow and grow, and then they'll want to do business with you. We believe in the like, I've got a guy principle. So this is where, you know, there's a local gas station just down the street from me. It's called Pete's Surplus. And at Pete's Surplus, every single morning, the guys will walk in and they will sit on the ammo boxes because you know it's a surplus and millinery. So they'll sit on the ammo boxes and they're going to shoot the breeze. They're going to drink the coffee that has gone that's been run through grounds twice. Not kidding you, but they don't care because they're there and they'll just drink the coffee. What are they there for? They're there to shoot the breeze. This is where so much business is done. And I know this, I'm in a small town. But there's still pockets of this in big cities as well. It's like, where do you go to kind of shoot the breeze, right? So the old fashioned principles of referral, we call it now. I mean, it's just, I've got a guy. And so we tap into those principles greatly in the mainstream marketing strategy because we believe if you stick there, then as a small business owner, you're going to be able to make a big impact. I'm going to skip over the next one because I'm already a little bit of time here. All right, let me share with you then. I'm going to turn off my notifications here. This is Jordan, who is she's a business owner in Alabama. And she and her mom have 3 home decor stores and gift shops in Alabama. And she started utilizing the Main Street Marketing Program. So these principles and everything, we just call it the Main Street Marketing Program back in 2018. And they just, it's amazing. They just had their most profitable year ever in 2020, even though they opened store number 3 in 2020. It's incredible. She's a rock star. But here she's talking about, you know, building the list and building that trust.
Kind of the thing that I didn't realize was even more valuable is the fact that I now had over 600, you know, email addresses, phone numbers, and snail mail, you know, mailing addresses that I could use and keep to constantly tell people about the store. So yes, good marketing creates short-term sales, but it also creates long-term value in the form of gathering customers' contact information.
All right, so back to the list. These clips, by the way, are part of our documentary series that we have on our website. It's longlivesmallbusiness.com. So if you want to watch the whole thing and listen to a vacuum store owner and a guy who does a handyman business. Who else do we have on there? Jordan's full story, my full story. They're all on there. So if you want to check that out, you certainly can. So the second principle that I wanted to point out, and there's many that I could have picked from, but the second one is really to be a David. And this does go along the lines of that old fashioned, you know, sit down, make the connection with people, take the time to make the connection with people, being a David. So we all know the story of David and Goliath. And so often what we find when we start working with small businesses who are looking at doing paid advertising, so they know that there's something in there, you know, that I got to get current, I got to get with the times. And so they're like, can I do this? Should I do this social media thing? And the other marketers on here might be smiling alongside of me with that one. So yes, I mean, typically a small business owner, and I was right there too. So, just saying that, they think about social media as something where, yes, there's the connector, but then when they actually start to understand that they can go behind the curtain and they can see all of the really ninja things that you can do from behind the curtain to reach people, they get a little starstruck, I'll be honest, and then they try to go too big with their strategy. So we try to make sure that people always just stay small, be a David. So think about those relationships. Think about building those relationships little by little, using the paid advertising to get your message out there and track it, which is amazing. But don't lose that. Don't lose that kind of, that person inside, just like I was when I was a stay-at-home mom and I had that dream. Tell that story, like have values, share your story continuously, stick in that small world. And as your business grows, you'll just be able to continue to build that trust. So don't try to be something you're not. Leverage those strengths as a small business. Be the underdog, share your process, craft a community.
Sorry, I accidentally muted you. I didn't mean to mute you. Sorry. You can unmute yourself real quick.
There we go. Am I good?
Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, have values and share them. Okay, so here's one example. We work with another local gas station. All right, another local gas station, and he happens to be retired military. And so that's one thing that we love to pull out and to bring out about him. Does it have anything to do with the hot dogs that he sells or the convenience store side of things, or even the cafe that's attached to his convenience store? No, not directly, but that's something that he personally has invested in over these years. And so we wrap a lot of the marketing around that personal value structure that he already has. People, at the end of the day, people still buy from people. And so we can't, get into this issue of just trying to market our product and our product and our product, or our service and our service over and over again. You really, at the end of the day, no matter what industry you're in, you are always marketing yourself.
Hey, Alison.
Yeah.
Hey, do you mind? We may have to move on. Sorry about that. We just want to make sure that we got a few other people that are going to be speaking as well. But
yep.
Thank you so much for that feedback. It really was awesome. And
no problem.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Alison.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
No, we're excited to have you. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is actually we're going to move on to Brittany Murphy, who's going to be talking about SEO and website. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say as well. And do you need to share your screen as well, Brittany?
I do not. So I promise me I'll try to make SEO as sexy as possible without any visuals to go with it. So just use your imagination, people. That's all I ask. Well, thank you for the introduction, Raphael. So I'm Murphy. I'm the marketing director at One Thing Marketing. And what we mainly focus on is helping a lot of local businesses get more of their local clients to find them. So the main objectives to do that is with a really great website, but not just a great website that actually shows up when people are trying to type in what you do, your products and your services. So COVID has definitely made all of the old things we've used to do so much harder. There's no more door-to-door knocking salespeople that we could hire to easily kind of go through. It's changed a little bit, but these were kind of things that we lost that for a bit. We lost the ability to have any type of large events, even the events Alison were talking about. We kind of lost this during that time. We kind of lost that ability to host the events to share our brand and kind of some different things that we're all about. And the other aspect of it is less people were out driving, which was great if you were one of the ones that got to drive, no traffic. But for the majority of us that work in advertising, if anybody kind of, obviously with the less traffic sweep, we had less time to run radio ads and do billboard ads. So what we kind of helped focus people on, and really what helped get a lot of people through 2020, was really focusing more on SEO. So for those who don't know what SEO is, it just stands for search engine optimization. And so SEO is really just kind of where your potential clients are right now. They're looking straight at their phones and they're trying to see what restaurants open, what hours do people have, and maybe what contractors open at what times to fix any of their home problems. Because I'm sure if you're like me, staying home for so long, your honey to-do list got imaginably way too long. You know, so I know a lot of husbands out there hate that. And so that's kind of where, in a sense, what we do is help people be right in front of the moment when those people are searching for them. And that's really what SEO does at the end of the day, is when someone's going straight to Google and typing in HVAC repair and they see these companies pop up, what we do is what helps those companies pop into those areas. So during this time I will kind of go over some fundamental things. And also I do want to give you a lot of tips and tricks of things to do on your own. Or if you are paying anybody for marketing SEO services, then just some kind of things to look into and make sure you're asking them to do this for you. That's the biggest thing I want to say as much as today is I make my role all about education and making sure you understand at the end of the day as a business owner what you're paying for. So whether these things are something you might do yourself, they are things that you could obviously send to your marketer person and kind of making sure they're looking at these things as well. So the biggest thing I want to just kind of talk about is what actually is SEO, kind of how does it work? So what SEO is basically when you show how relevant your website is to Google. And so what I mean by relevant is you send enough clues off of your website that tells Google, what do you do and what do you want to show up for? So for example, my HVAC contractor, well, he does air conditioning repair, furnace repair, replacements. They do all of these things of nature. So if their website doesn't send enough clues to Google of all the different types of services within HVAC that they repair or replace, then Google's not going to rank them very high because they're not sending enough clues that they should be seen as an authority in the industry. So the biggest thing as far as how it works is you actually have that physical content on your site. And so what I mean by that is your website shares that information that Google can match back and say, okay, I understand that you have these articles about your furnace repair. People are typing this in. I see the match. And the basis of things, that's really how it works out online. So really, as far as you can't make your website rank without doing SEO. And it's all about just creating the right content and add to the site to show Google you're actually a resource. So at the end of the day, I always tell everybody, you should have more funnels of marketing than just one. SEO is a great thing, but I love when we have clients who also do a little bit of other things, just kind of make sure they bring some things in. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of marketing methods they can do. And mainly a lot of the traditional ones that we could talk about are where no one right now has the right tracking abilities with it. And you can track all these things. Almost everything you do nowadays, you can track. And so, SEO is the only thing you can kind of do that really sticks and stays outside of the traditional methods. So making sure you're tracking that is kind of a good option to kind of go and get that ready. So we all kind of understand, hopefully, a little bit what SEO is. So what I kind of want to talk about now is what can you put on your website to get found more online? So the biggest answer to this is all of your service or products that you offer need to have their own page on your website. So for instance, let's go back to my HVAC contractor. He needs to have a cooling type of page. He needs a heating page. He also does repair and replacements for both. So he needs an air repair page, an air replacement, a heating replacement, and a heating repair, and everything he does. So what I just kind of ask everybody is write down what you do, what you provide, and go back to your website. So you can break down what you do as much as possible. I'm sure anybody who's not in the marketing world could just say, that Alison does network marketing. I just do Google marketing. And oh my gosh, Robert, he just kind of does podcasts. That's really segmenting us into a small box. So even with what we do, we have to break down what we do in a different niches and services, just like you would do. So that's really kind of in the day, you need to make sure that you have all these pages set up for what you do. So for instance, let's just say you have one of these pages. The biggest thing I suggest everybody do is very simple. Copy, select. How many words do you have on this page about that service? The sweet spot, you honestly need more than 1,000 words, hands down at the end of the day. And honestly, the more words you can put on one of these pages, the better. So a quick example of this would be in the old days, when you hired a marketing company to do SEO, they would write 100 blog posts for you within that year. But each of them were about 500 words, a quick answer, not much content or anything to it. Nowadays, it is the exact opposite. Google wants to see that you have the best resources on your website versus your competitors, and that's how they help you rank. So for instance, if you could actually write 3,000 words, or again, partner with a marketing company to write 3,000 words for you, that page with 3,000 words will get three times more traffic than a blog post that only has 1,000 words to it. So I'm sure we might have heard the phrase content is king, and that is very true. And that's kind of where, in a sense, what we have to do now is work within more of the algorithm. And so by doing that, you want to make everything you put on these pages as resourceful as possible. So if you're writing this yourself, a quick tip, go back to the old days, maybe pull your 5-year-old beside you if you can bear them any longer, and go over the who, what, where, when, and why. So just think about it. If you're talking about your service and you're trying to explain to a 5-year-old, what questions would they ask you if they can stay on topic? So that's kind of a good way to think about all the different types of things you can come in with. So name your service. Who do you serve? Where do you serve? Why do you do how you do it? Things like that nature. This kind of help you create more content about what you're writing. Because, and as well, if you can actually answer all these questions, the other thing you want to do is make sure you use words that your receptionist is hearing people call and say at the same time. So an example of what I mean by this is, I was introduced as the girl who knows what SEO is. Now, I'm sure there is one person on this meeting today who did not know what SEO was or what it stood for. So I would call SEO a technical word, technical jargon. So we all have those different technical jargon words in our industry. And when you're writing, you want to use those because some people actually do know what they are and they're looking for an expert that mentions that they do SEO services. But I'm also going to put in different words that other people describe what I do as. So for instance, I've heard just the terms like Google rankings or optimization, website optimization. So there's all these different variations of what people call what I do. So when I write these articles, I make sure to include all these different variations of what it's called, because at the end of the day, Google can see that text you have on your page and see that you're mentioning these keywords that people are typing in. And so that's kind of the premise of how SEO works. So at the end of the day, you want to write as much as possible, but you really want to make sure you are answering the question at the same time. So for instance, when we write content for our clients, we're obviously optimizing and put all of the clues that Google's asking for us to have in these articles. But at the same time, you need to look over the content and make sure, if you did not know anything about your business, would this content close you or make you push the back button and go to a competitor's website? Those are the other halves of it. So in a sense, you want to make sure you're answering those questions, because your content is what shows that you know what you're talking about. We all say we're experts in our field, but make sure your website actually encompasses the fact that you are an expert in your field. And by doing that, that just means you create more content on your website that shows all of that. So just to go back to my previous point, all of your services or all of your products should have that individual page. And if you are a retailer, obviously, if you have 1,000 products, I don't mean that you have to write content and SEO for every single product, but categorize it. So maybe as far as the point Alison made, she had a scarf portion of it. So maybe she doesn't name every single type of scarf because she has other types of clothing. But for her scarves page, she would actually optimize that as a product page and do SEO for it. So you can do that with products and you can do it with services. So at the end of the day, when you actually have all of your products and services listed out and very easily to see for your clients, then now you can, I'm sorry to say it, write more content. So after you have those pages, yes, the term blogging has gotten popular and popular, but really all blogging is that you're finding different questions people are asking on the internet and you're writing the answer to it. So for example, if you want to take my business, a lot of people ask a lot of crazy, weird questions on Google, and that's a great opportunity for us. So what I do is, if I answer the phone and someone says, hey, so how long does a website take to build? Well, you know what? I've had this question quite a few times. And now that I'm going back on Google, I'm seeing that a lot of people are typing this in because they're curious to know, what's the time frame for a website? What's the average? So maybe I should make a blog post that actually talks about it. And so what we do from there is we do the keyword research, see that people are asking about it. I'm getting a lot of clients ask about it, which is another verification technique. Ask your receptionist, if they could have a little notepad beside the phone, write down the questions when someone calls and write it down. And so every time someone calls new and asks the same question, all they got to do is put a little tally mark beside it. When you see that you have a few questions that everybody asks day in and day out, well, you probably should answer this on your website, because people are, if they're calling and asking you it, they're also Googling and searching it, because I'm sure you've been the same place where you just didn't want to ask anybody for the answer. You wanted to be independent and just find it on Google. And so people do that. They want to know as much as they can before they talk to a potential business just to safeguard themselves. So when it comes down to that, if they actually type in that question and find your blog post about it and you answered it, well, now A, they know about you. B, they think you're an expert because they've read everything you have to say. And C, they're on your website, which your website, the whole point of it is to tell them to take action. Maybe that's to schedule a free estimate or to go ahead, call and book something. Whatever that call to action is, because they're on your website now, you can allow for them to have more actions. And in a sense, at the end of the day, it's more traffic into the website. So if we know that we can increase the traffic of people coming into the website, we're probably also going to increase the number of people who find what they're looking for and call you to schedule. So it's kind of the biggest thing I did want to talk to you all about is you can do this portion on your own. Obviously, you can find someone else expert with it, but it's all just about, even if you're working with someone right now, go look at those pages. How much content's on them? Do you answer questions in that content, or is it completely so technical that none of us might be able to, from the outside, understand what you're trying to accomplish with it? And also make sure, hey, try to make a regular commitment of, I'm going to write one new blog post a month or one a quarter, whatever works for you, but try to have some type of method like that. So when your receptionist has her list and she says, hey, this question was asked 50 times, this one 40, this one 35, you can take that list and you say, okay, I'll write this post January, this post February, this post March. You can easily kind of have some type of systematic process like that. So therefore you can think of new ideas without having to do any work. And now you just have to write it to answer the question. And since you're an expert in your field, just write it down and think about it. If you had to explain it to your kid, how to make sure I answer all the questions for them, because when you answer those questions, that's where Google again sees these clues that relates what you are talking about to these keyword searches that people are putting on there. So the biggest thing I can say is try to do this consistently. So if it does mean, hey, I can't do this more than once a quarter, that's fine. Even my company, we're kind of like the shoe cobbler's kids at times. So I do understand that things do get put in the back burner, but try to make at least some small commitment of that to make sure it does move on with it. A note about websites. So this is a little bit how to optimize your website, but I do want to talk quickly about websites in general. So my only thing I would like to make sure everyone understands from today is make sure that you own your website. That is kind of the thing I'm known for, is all I talk about is ownership of this. We don't want to be renters of our websites. We all want to own a home. We all want to own a website. And that's what it kind of comes down to in the day. So if you have a website that's built on Wix, Squarespace, GoDaddy, Shopify, different places like that, you're paying them to host it, doesn't mean you own it. So what this means is if any of these places were no longer giving you the customer service you were looking for, maybe their page speed was starting to slow down, so your website was loading slower, and now you take 5 minutes to see the next product page. If you decide to move, you have to rebuild your website basically from scratch somewhere else. So it is one thing I like to tell anybody is if you're going to put money into optimizing your website, make sure that you own this website, because that will help you the most at the end of the day, that basically everything you do marketing wise is built on your own entity. So even as far as Robert's going to talk about podcasts, there's obviously a lot of platforms you can host this on, but there's no reason why you couldn't have these also on your own website. So they can go out to these other places to listen or watch to them, but your website is the hub that they come to see as much as they want about it. So that is kind of a good thing as far as all the marketing elements, you can really kind of make these go together. The last two things are, please, please, please make sure your website's mobile friendly. We are now in 2021, which it feels like, 1999 was 10 years ago. It wasn't, sadly. We're over 21 years away from that. So that used to be the thing then, is you could zoom in, it was kind of hard to see everything, but now there's no excuse. Every website today has to be mobile friendly, and you will not rank on Google if you're not mobile friendly. There was a mobile update that happened years ago, and it is every day taking over websites that have refused to make that change over to mobile friendly. So again, if you don't want to squint, neither do your clients. So don't make them do that, because your competitor isn't making them squint, and that's who they're going to check out and book through. And the very last thing as far as websites is make sure they are loading quickly. So if at any point you are getting impatient waiting on a website to load, then it is too slow. And a lot of times anything over 2 seconds for anybody is way too long. If you're in the field as I am, anything over a 0.02 is way too long for me, just because we're used to making sure the websites go fast. But just think about it. If you were your own customer, go to your website, how quickly does it load? If it takes a while, then, and you're getting frustrated, then your client has already gotten frustrated probably 3 pages prior because they don't know you as well as you do. So they don't have the investment in hoping your websites works as well as you do. So it's kind of the biggest thing as far as those websites is just make sure you own it, make sure it's easy to read for your clients, and make sure that it loads as quickly as possible. So therefore you can get the biggest bang out of your buck when you send people and get that traffic to your website. So there is obviously other things you can do on your website to make sure that you rank higher. And there's also things you can do off of your website to help get more business coming in. So the biggest things as far as when it comes to off page is really the local maps. So if I'm sure all of us have done a search on Google, and if someone hasn't, I'm gladly explain. If you type in any type of service, let's go back to HVAC repair, you'll see ads, you'll see a map section, and then you'll see the rest of the organic results. Now, you actually can hire people to get you in the map section. So that's something we specialize in as well, but you can do these things too. So you want to show up in that map section because let's just say there's a lot of people in the spectrum in the world nowadays. There are people who need an answer immediately and just need to talk to someone and get something booked. And then there's those that want to do their research. They want to check out your website. They actually want to read your about page. They want to get to know you before you come into their home to do anything. So everything you do on your website helps that person. But the first person I talked about who just needs help, and a lot of times this relates mainly to my local trade businesses. They have emergency services. So yes, like HVAC repair, roofing, things like that, where something's broken, you need it fixed immediately. Google My Business is going to be one of the key players for you. So a good example of this is our clients who are contractor type of businesses in the home trade services get between 60 to 75% of their leads through their Google My Business listing. Now, you can rank this, but the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure you've done the things I talked about above. Your website needs to have SEO on it for your maps listing to rank well. Obviously, everybody can go out right now and claim their Google My Business listing and you can see it pop up. But at the end of the day, there's going to be competitors above you that are going to be closer to a prospect, and that is a factor. How close your actual listing is to the person searching for it, how well optimized your website is number 2. So if you're not close to that person, but you have a great optimized website, well, you can reach that person. So it's kind of in a sense, if you see your competitors are showing up in your neighborhood, but your business is sitting right on top of it, all that means is most likely their website has a lot better features and SEO and optimization to it completely. So therefore they outrank you even being further away than you are right at that moment sitting on top of your competition. So for anybody who is not familiar with the Google My Business marketing type of strategy, go today, claim your listing, type it in your business, type it in your address. If you go into Google Maps, the first thing they ask is, are we missing an address? They want you to help them fix and make sure this is up to date as soon as possible. So claim your listing. Another reason you want to claim it and verify it is because it will actually create a login for you. So that way, crazy enough, there have been stories where competitors have actually changed other competitors' business hours on their Google My Business page and have unfortunately bankrupt some companies because they might have been a big weekend business. And then they said they were closed on the weekends. And so people stopped calling them. And it just was a snowball effect for these businesses. So not that everybody in the world is awful, but just protect your assets. That's all we ask about for here is claim it. And that way you can verify and you can be the person that actually says when things open, when things close, and how to contact us. So again, that number 2 is optimizing your website with what we talked about previous. Step 3 of this, and the final step that I would say is the biggest one to kind of finish up with here, is you want to get as many reviews as you can for your Google My Business page. So at the end of the day, we all know that reviews online or kind of the word of mouth of 2020, we weren't allowed to just kind of ask our neighbors what was going on. We didn't do anything. So we all went straight to Google and saw our best friends who are anonymous typing into Google My Business their positive and negative reviews for a business. So you do need to make sure you claim it so that way you can actually respond to these reviews. There's many ways and there's many strategies to kind of talk about review management, but in the day, just make a consistent pattern. So if you can, ask 10 clients each week and try to get one to actually leave that review for your business. If you can make a game plan of 1 review a week, then that is probably one of the most optimal ways to do this and completely kind of get those together. So that is the 3 things I really want to talk about, is how to optimize your website, how to optimize off your website, and some big keys about your website. And if you need any help with this, we do offer a free 30-minute strategy. I will post my information into the chat box. So if you would like to schedule it, you can book a time on my calendar. I do a complete website audit and I do a complete SEO audit for you. So during that 30 minutes, I tell you what I've seen, whether you've done SEO or not done SEO. So I just kind of give you some education. Please feel free to use me for free. That's what I'm here for, is to help educate you all as much as possible. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone wants to comment to my email information in the comments. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Brittany. And we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A as well, for you guys that are still on the call. So I guess now what we'll go ahead and do is pass it along to Robert Johnstone with Wayne Media Group, who's going to talk a little bit about podcasting and how it can be an effective way to market your business.
Awesome. Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. We can't see you though. I know you want.
Don't worry.
You were testing.
I got it. There we go. I'm trying out this new beta feature that Zoom just introduced not too long ago. So first off, Alison and Brittany, thank you for speaking. I'm gonna be playing off some of the stuff that you mentioned too tonight, because it was so excellent. I'm Brittany, what she was saying about owning your website, and then especially the importance of Google My Business today. It's owned by Google. Think about that for search engine optimization. Google wants you to use their platforms. So Google My Business was an excellent thing to bring up. Thanks, Brittany, for that. So I'm going to be talking about a newer platform that you might not think traditionally for small business, which is podcasting. And we'll go into the details of that here in just a second. Let me work these slides. Some of the stuff we're going to be covering today for a brief outline. By the way, just to let you know, I'm a talker too. So I do podcasting myself. And if I don't have a presentation to go off of, I will go off the rails. So I'm going to try to stick with this. And I was instructing for a little bit, so this kind of helps. But we're going to be going over podcasting today. What exactly is going on? What is podcasting, if you might not know? Why you should podcast, and then some steps for how you can start podcasting immediately. Okay, so first off, podcasting, what it is, by definition, is basically a pre-recorded audio file that can be stored digitally for basically consumption at any time. And that's part of the reason that's so powerful today with all of the other options and all of the movement that people have to do, especially busy people, is that they have an option to find something interesting on their own time that they can consume on the go when they're ready to. So a couple cool stats. First off, as of January 2020, stats aren't out yet for this year, there were 850,000 active podcasts. Because of COVID, that's going to be even more, where we've already approached over 1 million. 55% of the population has listened to podcasting, not just known of podcasting, but they listen to a podcast of some sort. And of that population, 37% of listeners listen to podcasts every month. A major one too, to where you can see how serious business is getting about podcasts. One of the most well-known podcasters, Joe Rogan. If you ever watch UFC or Fear Factor, you know of this guy. His podcast just got exclusively listed on the platform Spotify for $100 million contract deal, which is amazing. So there's some big things happening. So what are the listeners? Here's a little bit of information about them. 45% of listeners have a household income of over $250,000. 67% of listeners are between those ages of 18 and 44. A majority of listeners have a postgraduate degree. I put that on there twice. And that's really important because it's a very, very educated audience. And then if you see over here, 69% of listeners agree that podcast ad made them aware of new products or services. And many of those people too are also purchasing products because of that, because of the trust built in with them. So we're here to talk about the business side of things, especially for small business. What's going on with that? And we'll get into the details even more. So number one, 39% of small and medium-sized business owners listen to podcasts regularly. So if you are perhaps maybe a business coach, finances, anything like that, anybody within the B2B market, you have a captivated audience at your disposal with podcasting. Businesses are increasing increasing tenfold the amount of money that they're putting into advertising on podcast. 780 million is going to approach, get even bigger than that soon. And then another really important factor that I'm a little bit in the way of, I'll move for you. Hosting platforms are seeing 230% year-over-year growth in the business podcasting realm, meaning that businesses like ours, like yours, like everybody who's listening, are starting to use podcasting as their marketing realm, and even the small ones. And that's mostly what I'm here to explain today. How can you use podcasting for your small business? Some of the things that people might be wondering right away is like, well, if you want a successful podcast, you have to build a large audience. That's how you monetize it. I'm telling you, with the data that we have coming in, all the research that we've put into Speakeasy Podcast Network and the clients we even have there, it's not the case. It's not always about the big audience. Sometimes it's about just using this as a content strategy. And I'll explain that why. So why start podcasting? I'll take a little drink real quick. Here's kind of the stuff we're going to be covering throughout my presentation. We'll be quick about it. Podcasting will save you time and it will save you costs. And you're probably a little bit curious about that time. I'm going to be talking on a microphone for an hour or two. It's pretty easy once you kind of understand the formula. Podcasting is a content generator of all sorts. If you have any issue with developing engageable content for your small business, podcasting is a great way to kickstart that and get many forms of it through this platform. We're going to get geeky with SEO a little bit, which Brittany gave a great introduction to about how podcasting can help with your web traffic. And then one of the most important factors, if not the most important factor, is how podcasts help you develop relationships with your audience, your peers, your strategic partners, and then on top of that too, the people who influence you as well. So going on to the time and money part, one of the main things I like to talk about with podcasting, especially if I have some people on who are used to the days of broadcast television, radio, everything like that, there are no gatekeepers to it. Nobody is stopping you from getting on, a microphone, recording yourself and what you're talking about with your business, and then distributing that as a marketing tool. Nobody's going to come up to you and say, hey, you don't have enough experience. You don't have a broadcasting degree. You're not a celebrity. Maybe we'll give you a shot, but we didn't like how your pilot episode performed. Therefore, you're not going on the platform. We're going to take all your money. It's just not the case. So it's kind of open reign with that. There is no gatekeepers and it's free to start. It's simple. You get on there, you record an episode. Then you can take care of the rest because it has a quick turnaround time. It's pretty easy to cut, edit, and distribute a podcast. On top of that too, just the cost saving side of things compared to traditional media sources, and then even paid advertising across various digital platforms now, which cost is going up. Cost is going up on that kind of stuff. So with a podcast, you can get your own message out there, has a lot of shareability, and you're not taking on the cost that traditional advertising would have to give you a much smaller segment. So content generation. I'm not going to go through these steps. Go ahead and read them as I'm going along, how this kind of works. But the main thing to focus on here is you think about it. You have a 30-minute conversation about something that you know, something within your business, something that you're good at. And if you're owning that business, you inevitably do. You're doing well with it. And this is, a good way to show that off, to show that you're an expert. But within those shows, when you listen to them afterwards, or you take notes on them, or you have your support staff, or if you have a marketing team like myself or somebody else, then they're going to be able to clip tons and tons of content out of that. And whether that be video clips, social media clips, breaking down the audio, there's a ton of different ways that you can take one episode and turn it into content. And I have a little kind of diagram to show you that. So out of a 15-minute podcast episode, you're talking for 15 minutes, you bring up good 5 topic points. Let's say you record video with it too, or you at least put engaging images within a video. Now all of a sudden you have a good video, clips for social, a full YouTube video. You got the recap. You can do blog writing out of the transcripts of podcast posts. Those blogs are going to be SEO optimized, just as Brittany was talking about. The audio is going to make great audiograms, quote from the images, insights and takeaways, and the list goes on and on and on for how much content you can develop for your social media strategies utilizing podcasting as a platform. So we're going to hit briefly on this because Brittany mentioned, everything she said was so good. But yes, podcasting is great because it's another platform that you can go on. She mentioned briefly with keyword targeting. Since you can get transcriptions with your podcast, on top of that, being able to create show notes, small blogs based on it, footnotes within many, many different platforms that you can distribute your podcast on, whether that be YouTube, your website, Apple, Spotify, et cetera, sharing it on other people's website if it's relevant to their message. These are all good ways to start building up the SEO and target traffic towards your brand and towards your business. The backlinks alone are powerful. Shareability on those many different websites we were talking about. Taking your transcriptions, cleaning them up, indexing them for keywords, turning them to blogs, talking about those niche topics. Those are very, very important when it comes to SEO, because you might, when it comes to building a website from this ground up, especially if you're in a competitive business where other people have been in that realm for a long time, it's going to take a while before you can climb up ahead of them for some of the main listed keywords, like roofing in Louisville, for example, is a hard one. But if you're talking about those other topics involved around it, and people are actually searching on Google for those topics, and you've talked about them on your podcast, you're going to ultimately be able to share that content on your website too, and increase your search engine optimization, all in all to increase web traffic to your brand. So to me, this is the most really fantastic, important, and wonderful thing about podcasting. Podcasting is a relationship builder on so many different realms. And we'll go over some of the main headers here. So authority and credibility, and then the audience connections, talking about the audience that you might get who particularly might need your business, your service, your product, etc. Being able to come out there as a real person, share your stories, share your expertise, talk about the ins and outs of businesses, the business that you're in, talk about the industry, talk about what you've done wrong even, and be open and vulnerable. Talk about your kids, talk about the problems you have home, talk about your dog, how you need to get your dog set, while you're doing the podcast. These are all things that actually create an emotional and intimate connection with the audience members. So they're going to be able to connect with you via that because they see you as a true person and not just a brand. We all know nowadays that one of the most powerful things you can do for your business now is self-branding with yourself and being that picture of that business. And podcasting is just another great way of doing it. Absolutely is. So also too, the networking recognition. I put an escalator up here because I've been kind of talking about this for a minute. If you are in one of those fields, let's say you're new into it, where your kind of power is within the people that you know, and you're trying to network. I'm a big advocate of networking myself. It's brought my business way, way ahead of where we could be right now without it, just using traditional forms or just sticking to the internet or just sticking to the marketing services that we offered. But it still takes, somebody, they might know somebody, they make that introduction, you're climbing the staircase. You can't beat that angle. You're going up 90 degrees. If you make it, the degree a little bit lower, you're still going to be making there. It's just going to go a lot slower. And then the other way around, whereas a podcast can act as an escalator and bring you up those steps and help you introduce yourself to the people that you want to gain influence with a lot quicker. And the reason being is because doing interview podcasts for people within your network is extremely powerful because you're giving them a platform as well for them to market on, for them to know that they're an expert in their field too, and they have something of value that they can add to the industry that you're trying to target as well. Now, because of that too, without a doubt, they're going to share that podcast on their own marketing channels, social media, etc., whatever they're using. Just like us, I guarantee you, most of us speakers on here today, we went ahead and shared the links that Raphael put out this live station right now on our own social media. It's extremely good to use podcasting as a networking tool and to meet the people that you want to meet. So I love the relationship building side of podcasting. And here's a couple other things. A lot of industries and the enterprise businesses, they're using it for internal communication and employee onboarding. They're using podcasting to keep up morale and, almost like a weekly newsletter to tell everybody what's going on, what type of new services are going to be launched, what type of training they can get access to, what type of benefits are changing, everything like that. It's really, really good. So consulting, a lot of podcasters, what they end up doing once they really, really crack into it, especially if they're talking about their industry, they're already developing themselves as experts and authority in their field. Now, all of a sudden, other people from their field, like a roofing company who has a podcast, other roofers are going to start coming to them and be like, hey, how are you doing this? How are you doing so well? And they might at this point say, well, I could tell you, it might cost you a little bit, but I'd love to come and meet with you. On top of that, too, podcasting helps with professional development. It's helped me extremely become a more confident person, help with my speaking skills. And then all around with all the interesting conversations I have on the podcast that I host, I get to just learn from so many interesting people about their backgrounds, about what they've done that works and what doesn't work. And because of that, I take off my blinders every single time I jump on this microphone. On top of that, too, if you get really big, podcasters, just like we were mentioning earlier, advertisers are paying to be on podcast because podcast audiences are engaged and they trust the people that they're listening to. So there's a great realm for that. So how do I get started? That's the important thing. I just told you a lot of the good benefits, but you want to start a podcast, right? It's not that hard. It's not that hard to get on the equipment on the mic, but it doesn't mean you can't be organized and you can't, go at it wild, especially if you have something you're trying to accomplish with it. So you have to plan, come up with a concept, a format, a hosting style, consistent hosting for your show. Have goals for that and kind of make sure that you know where you would like your target audience to be. It's going to shift. It might shift a little bit to the left, the right, but there's going to be some shifts and then you have to adapt for that. It's great. If you want to start a podcast, start writing down episode notes right now. What are you going to be talking about? Because you have to stay consistent to do it. So you need to make sure that you have those topics and those guests already planned out. Make sure that if you have a team that you're working out those roles and responsibilities and come up with a consistent schedule. If you're trying to podcast and you're only releasing every few months, just like a TV show, people don't want to watch a TV show if it's only coming out at a random time and they don't even know about it. The best way you can do is schedule. Equipment. You got to ask yourself, what can you afford at this time? You can do a podcast directly on your phone if you want. If you want great volume, you start getting up to more equipment, and that might come down the road. You might come up to some of the more professional equipment like what we have at the studio, and more professional soundboards and tools that you can use to really make the podcast even better. A quiet, soundproof space is very important. So you got to make sure that you know your surroundings. One of the easiest things you can do is put a blanket over the door in a small area and kind of put a bunch of stuff in the room that you're podcasting in to kind of deflect that sound so you don't have an echo. If you want your podcast to be a success, you have to market it. Just putting it up on the platforms and being like, well, I hope there's the best, and putting a post every single time it comes up on your social media page that not a lot of people are following, you're not going to get the results that you want. It's a slow game, but if you don't have a marketing plan around your podcast for content, when you're going to be pushing everything out, and then making sure that your audience is sharing, and engaging and asking questions and getting more audience members for you along with your guest, you're not going to move anywhere with it. And the most important thing with podcasting today is to stay consistent. All right. It's an investment in your time. It's going to take a while. Typically, what we see with our clients is I tell them every single time, even so, especially if you haven't been doing this and you're developing those skills, you're not going to be an expert right away. And you're going to look back at episode 1 and you're going to be like, what was I doing? Like, what am I even talking about? I don't even sound like that person anymore. And at that point, it's a good time to maybe re-record episode 1. But you have to develop your skills. You have to develop your message. And if you keep at it, the ROI is it's going to start making its way towards you. And those connections are going to be had. And you're going to start getting more referrals. And people are going to call you out within your industry, and they're going to want to know your secret. So the super secret right down here at the bottom is just keep recording. So I like this quote right here, and it kind of plays into everything I said. Robert Garish is an author, a podcaster, and a small business consultant. He says, you just need one person to listen, get your message, and pass it on to somebody else. Then you've doubled your audience from that one person. That is a good way of looking at podcasting. Make it shareable. If you get one person who likes your show, or one guest who is honored to be on your show to get their message out, when they share that podcast, you are on their platforms as well. So all this to say, I do have a really cool place. Me and my partners do. We have a company called Wayne Media Group. An arm of that is the Speakeasy Podcast Network. When we first started Wayne Media Group, we are a small business company here in Louisville. We also have a place up in Michigan as well, and just opened our second studio up there. Our mission was to do this. It was to come up with affordable marketing solutions that are scalable for the businesses that we work with, while also acting not as a outsourced division, but as an internal department that feels like they're part of the team. So once we started working on that, we realized the power of podcasting through our own efforts. We knew that this was going to be a big thing for small businesses going forward, to start implementing this in their marketing plans to help ease their efforts and expand into new audiences, develop authority, and build expertise. So if you do want additional help, we can take care of most everything when it comes to podcasting and marketing. We master, cut, edit the audio. We do all the management and distribution online. We help podcasters as they grow get advertisers and sponsors. We have a beautiful soundproof studio with state-of-the-art equipment. We have content development packages from those shows that kind of go with that matrix I showed you earlier. There's an on-site engineer. If anybody watches Joe Rogan's podcast or listens to it, would be a better way of saying it, we call him our young Jamie. He is there to make sure that there's a smooth transition and to be able to ask any questions and to make sure that he's taking notes. So if you didn't like something you said, that's going to get cut out from that show. Another thing too, with the network, we are developing a really good networking solution in Louisville and in Michigan, to where if people are podcasting at our studio, we want to help them get relevant guests and introduce them to other podcasters and other people within our network. And on top of that too, we'll save you, even though podcasting is extremely approachable. If you're a busy person, you want to focus on what you do best, which is your job, and being an expert in it, we'll save you the time on the back end by taking care of all the steps above. So once again, I'm Robert Johnstone. I'm with the Speakeasy Podcast Network and the Wayne Media Group. You can visit us online at speakeasynetwork.com or waynemedia.com. We're right over off of Blankenbaker and 64 with our studio. If you are interested in podcasting or anything else, get a hold of me. All my information is on that card below. I'll also put that inside the group chat too. So Raphael, Alison, Brittany, thanks so much for having me here tonight. It was great hearing from every single one of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate those insights. So what we thought we'd do at the end, I know we're a little bit over, but if you guys have any questions in particular, feel free to share them. You can either unmute your mic or you can pop them in the chat box. I'm also going to check on Facebook Live to see if there are any questions there. So feel free to chime away if you guys have any questions in particular.
Can I ask Brittany a question real quick?
Of course, yeah.
So one of my ventures is a retail site, and I sell nationally, and I market on Facebook all across the country. And I have small collections of things that is growing. So it would get not scalable to have a page for each product. And I do have collections and stuff, but is there any value in having pages that aren't backlinked or connected through the navigation, or no?
So you're saying the extra product pages might not be linked throughout all the website, or just some other random pages you're thinking of?
Both.
So when it comes back to that, you really do kind of want to have, it's just called an internal linking structure. But yes, ideally you want all the pages to somehow talk to one another. And by that, it is kind of linking them somehow. You can, if it's something you want to hide, you don't have to by any means. But if it's pages that you want to rank and show up, then yes, they need to obviously link throughout the website, because in an instance of it, the power other pages might have can help the power of the other page. So there's like the power of the website in total, but then page power. So that's kind of where like your individual collections, that page has its own power. So if they just type in that collection that they're looking for, they could find that versus your home page, if that makes sense.
Yes.
There's different strategies for them. And honestly, I'd be happy to do a free strategy session with you to determine what might be a great method for you. But ideally, yes, almost everybody should make sure a majority of their page is linked to another page somehow that's relevant. So don't just make them link to link.
Right.
Some relevancy where they kind of work together.
I'll probably schedule with you. I'm starting like just this week to see some ad fatigue. So.
Yep. Love to talk to you then. Good question.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess I have a quick strategy that I've been using recently that I thought was pretty helpful was for creating, like you were saying, Brittany, where you answer questions for people. You can record yourself answering the question and then go to somewhere like rev.com and just have it transcribed. And rev.com, just you pay per minute and it'll transcribe it for you. And then all you have to do is just edit the blog post. So I don't know if I'm assuming you do a lot of that.
Yeah, and honestly, as much as what Robert talked about, the biggest thing I loved about it is, yes, exactly what you said. You can, probably the easiest time save that he mentioned as well is just recording yourself talking about it, answering it. Now you can transcribe that, you add that to your website. It's a blog post. You can go through and optimize it. But yes, because that way as well, it's different methods of it. So just like Robert said, like now you have video and you have an audio version of it. You can put that on your site, but also you can put that on other platforms and then optimize that video on those platforms. So if you do add it to YouTube, you would want to make sure you fill out the description as complete as possible. And you can still use methods within that. So you want to put those keywords in that description as well, because YouTube's just another search engine. I mean, it's just the visual video form of Google, if you think about it that way.
YouTube is owned by Google on top of that too. So they definitely, it's just like Google My Business. Like the reason Google My Business is so powerful and so important with your marketing strategy is that it's owned by Google, and Google owns the search engine optimization factor. You know, of course there's traffic on DuckDuckGo and Bing, but it's not nearly as much as, not even measurable to Google. So if you want to have your SEO increased, you have to play Google's game and you have to use the platforms that they want to use. You know, and even posting is a good thing on Google My Business now too, to treat that like a social media platform and post content to it. You know, there's a number of different unique ways you can do it. You can geotag it to your locations. Yeah, I love Google My Business. I'm so happy you brought that up, Brittany, because it's what they say. It's as important as your website today, right?
Yeah, and a question I am getting frequently right now, just because there's a lot of things changing in the landscape politically. Still, you want to put your eggs in the basket of Google. So I have a few people asking me to optimize for DuckDuckGo or Beta or any of these other ones. At the end of the day, it's still 95+% is staying on Google. So you want to put your time there because that's where a majority of people are at the end of the day as well.
Awesome. Cool. I guess we'll give it one more minute if anyone else has any other questions. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. All right. Well, thank you all for attending tonight. Like I said, this is our second meeting for the Louisville Small Business Summit. So we're really excited to continue to engage with entrepreneurs here locally and really abroad, since we are live as well on online. But this will be recorded. It has been recorded and it will be posted on YouTube as well. So if you guys want to come back to it later on and check it out, feel free to do so. And again, thanks Brittany, thanks Alison, and thanks Rob for providing some awesome insights. I know a lot of people got a lot out of it. So
thanks for having us.
Definitely.
Hey Raphael, what
course.
is the easiest way to find the session?
So I will be, once we're done here, I download the video and then I will be uploading it to YouTube and I will be sending it out. So when you guys registered, you guys provide your email, I will send you the recording so you guys can have it readily available and you can consume it, whatever else. I'll be including Brittany's, Alison's, and Robert's contact information and their website and whatever else in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to them, feel free to do so. And yeah, that's kind of it.
And just as I was mentioning with podcasting, me, Brittany, and Alison will be sharing it to our pages as well. So, you know, that's another area you can find them if you're following us. Yeah, I know you are, Jonathan. Nice seeing you, by the way.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and I will say this: the goal eventually would be to meet in person as well. So we will keep you guys abreast on our ability to actually meet in person. which again, part of the networking aspect that Rob was talking about, right? We really want to make this into a community of people that are small business owners and we help support each other both on a networking aspect and then providing resources for people. So we will be meeting in person in the future. So stay tuned for that. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, it was great seeing you all, and we'll see you guys at the next summit. See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
You.
Of course. Thank
Bye.
you guys.
Nice meeting y'all.
Bye.